eBPM is a completely open source BPM project, but there's also a supported offering by Red Hat called GBPM. BPM suite. And I'll be talking a little bit about how we're extending our engine to support more adaptive and dynamic cases, and we see that as an extension to the normal structured processes where we offer more flexibility using more advanced features, but we really see that as a spectrum. So from well-structured processes to dynamic cases where nothing's even predefined, and that we don't see a line where a process would end and where a case would start. So we offer this spectrum. And the approach we've taken is we're building more advanced features like case roles, discretionary tasks, milestones, et cetera, on top of what we already have, which is a flexible engine based on bpmN2. And at the core engine level, we actually have integration with business rules and complex event processing, which allows us to extract certain business logic as well in different formats, like in this case, for example, a decision table. And so in the demo, I'll be giving a quick example, a healthcare example, where we will be following a patient through the stages of diagnosis and treatment. But we're going to have the doctor rather than the process making all the decisions. But in the end, users don't really want to build cases. They actually want to build applications from our point of view. Because those applications will actually allow the end users to do something. And there the approach we've taken is we're offering the building blocks that allow users to kind of combine and customize these blocks to kind of achieve that certain goal. And one of the main reasons why these custom applications are required from my point of view is that if you look at the generic tooling that a BPM solution would offer, it's generic. It's not specifically using the language that the end user might be familiar with. And customized applications are typically much easier to use and are typically showing exactly the right data at exactly the right time. And so if you look at case management versus structured processes, there's a lot of more advanced features that you could be using. But not every case is going to be using all the possible features that are available. So it's going to be up to the user to decide, okay, which of these features will I be using and how will I be combining this. And in the demo, I'll be showing a application custom built for the use case that I showed earlier, which is using healthcare-specific terminology and can be customized completely to the detail. But the application itself is composed of a lot of smaller building blocks that you can combine to kind of keep track of like participants in the case or being able to do ad hoc choice, et cetera, and milestones. So it's up to the user to combine these. And it's all built on what we call an intelligent process execution server, which offers an easy-to-consume REST API to get all the information that you need, and also to interact with the case itself. And so in the workbench, you can then combine these screen components that get their data from the backend even with reporting charts, etc., into a custom application using a drag and drop approach. And administrators can then extend the workbench that we offer out of the box with these custom applications, well, either within the workbench, so as additional applications, or as a separate web application that you would be able to go through as well. One of the key reasons why being able to combine and customize these building blocks and build your application is to be able to rapidly show how a case actually works, where the value is. And depending on the features that you're using in the case, we might even be able to generate the first version of that application for you, where we believe this might be, and then you can basically customize that based on your preferences. And it also allows you to build vertical solutions on top of the platform, because you can offer predefined cases, you can offer additional UI building blocks, or even pre-developed custom applications. You can offer that to your users, and they can then use the flexibility and the customization to kind of tweak them to what they need. And so in the demo, I'll be showing how we extended our workbench with this healthcare example to kind of introduce an additional custom application there. Okay, so the key thing is from our point of view, I think is two. One is more at the definition side when you're defining what I'll call more adaptive and more advanced cases. Hang on, let me just quickly refresh. So this is basically the workbench that we offer out of the box to kind of support the processes or cases through the typical life cycle of authoring, deployment, execution, and monitoring. So if I zoom in on the authoring side, this is the process that I showed in the slides as well, what we're doing is basically we're extending the engine to be able to support more advanced features, etc., that might be necessary to support the more advanced requirements that you have in adaptive cases. And in this example, we're using the bpmN2 ad hoc task to kind of have the different possibilities during the diagnosis are being modeled here. So, and these are the ad hoc tasks, or I mean, it could be just one task, or they could be simple sequences, process fragments, we call them. And the process itself here is not really defining which of these are being executed, but actually getting that logic out of the process and giving it back, in this case, to the end user. So the doctor is the one who's going to be deciding which of these tasks actually need to be executed. On top of that, we also allow tasks that might not have been modeled. So this is the model that you would do upfront, but at runtime, the doctor typically has the possibility to do additional things that might not even have been modeled. So inside this context, or you could even create a completely ad hoc process as well, you can at runtime create new tasks and add them inside, and they'll be tracked by the engine as well. And so these kind of capabilities, and we've extended additional ones, so to keep track of milestones, we're using what we call a metadata-driven approach, where you can basically annotate a lot of nodes with special information, which we can then use for at runtime for visualization, etc. So we can mark certain nodes as milestones, so we can keep track when certain milestones have been achieved. We can use that to keep track of different stages, etc. as well. And so another example. This actually shows how by extracting certain logic from the process itself, so we're not going to define like which tasks need to be executed in each of these stages and in which order, because the end user might need to make that decision. But we could automate some of this as well. This is an example of a decision table where under certain conditions we're going to automatically trigger some of these tasks. So like if the patient is older than a certain age and he has measurements that might indicate some kind of problem, we could automatically start triggering some of these tasks as well. So the combination that we have at the core engine level the ability to combine processes, so traditional process execution with business rules for more data-driven decisions, etc., and complex event processing as well, all inside one engine allow you to kind of use the best paradigm for whatever business logic you need to define. And so if I look at basically the out-of-the-box tooling that we support, then so that allows you to kind of go and look at, okay, what are the processes that are currently deployed in my solution? What are the running instances, etc. So if I go and look at this process, I can basically start a new instance of this treatment process, and I can go look at all the different details, the variables that are inside, even the model. So currently I've activated the first phase and I've automatically triggered the questionnaire, but these others are optional tasks that could be executed. And so the problem with user interfaces like this is they're more for like process administrators, etc. They're very generic. They're using the language of BPM, of processes, etc. They're not specifically written for the use case that I'm trying to solve. So, okay, so what we've then done is basically build a custom application, and then I've already exposed it as part of the workbench, that allows you to kind of keep track of and manage these treatment instances, but in a customized, in a special way. And so what this is doing is it's basically listing all the issues that are currently there. And this one is the one that I just started. And if you go look at the details, it provides a much more domain-specific view of all the data. So you're basically being able to see, like, okay, which of the milestones have been reached. None of them have been reached so far. But the participants, so like Dr. Jack Daniels, who's very popular, has got a lot of work, is participating here. And this is the task that's currently active. But there's what we call recommendations or ad hoc tasks, which kind of show all the possibilities that are currently defined in the case that you can choose from. And so all of this, like what are the possible milestones, what are the possible recommendations, what are the possible roles, and who's actually in there, that's not hard-coded in this UI. So these are generic UI building blocks that get that information from the underlying case. So if I basically define a different case, I don't have to like redefine this thing. I can basically just say, okay, I have participants in my case. Let's use these components. I'll get the information that's in the case about what roles are there, et cetera. And you can basically use that UI building block to do so. So for example, if I would trigger an additional task, so let's say that the doctor already knows, rather than going through additional investigation, he already knows there's going to be a diagnose. So he can select the diagnose option, and so this then actually goes through the underlying execution server. So you can, for example, see that if I trigger that, it will basically create in the out-of-the-box task list that we have, that task would show up there as well. So it's basically just a domain-specific view of the same information which is already there. So if I then basically just execute this task with a diagnosis, no, sorry, I need to go back here and go back to the view. You can see that actually the process has advanced, and I've basically reached the first milestone. The diagnosis has been done, and there's now new recommendations. So there's nothing active at this point, but there's additional recommendations. Again, they're loaded from the case that we defined earlier to kind of show the options. And then if these options are insufficient, the doctor can decide to do something. For example, another task that might not even be one of the recommendations, but that he wants to execute anyway. And so how do we then actually do this? So an administrator can kind of build these applications as, we call them the small UI building blocks, we call them screens. So a screen is just a small part in the UI that shows some information. So we've got a lot of these screens, and so the release screen, you can basically customize them to the detail, but from a UI perspective, they're relatively simple because all the complex logic of what should be visualized, etc., and how do I figure out what the milestones are, and what should happen if I trigger a task, etc., all that is basically supported by the underlying execution server with a REST API you can access to easily get information to that, get access to that information. And then, so you can define individual screens, or you can just use the ones that are available out of the box, and you can then combine them into a complete application. So just combine whatever screens you need into a full application. So for example, you can, if you have some data to show some kind of reporting, you can quickly, and let me just like the instances that have been started over the past few days. So you can see that I've done a few trial runs in the past few days. You can basically define a chart that shows this information or whatever information is relevant to the use case you're trying to solve, and have these screen components and these reporting components, etc., to build the custom application that you need. And finally, then, once you've built your application, you want to expose this. So like I've done here in the menu, you can create and expose these applications. And just to show you, so this is all done. This can all be changed live. So I've actually have a slightly different example as well, which is about releasing a release process for software. So if I add an additional menu item here and save this, so you basically do the change on the custom application you do. You refresh your application. And this kind of additional application is now available. So you can expose them within the workbench, or you can basically expose them on a separate URL outside of the workbench as well if you're not interested in exposing the other functionality. And so this example is more about an ad hoc example, or at least that's how it started. So what I used it for is for when we're doing a release of the next version of our software. There's a lot of different things that need to be tracked, and you really don't want to lose track of one of the important issues. Like, I mean, someone sent you an email, maybe we should still check that, and you forget, and then all of a sudden you've released, and because you didn't keep track of everything that still needs to be done. And so what this does is basically allows you to kind of keep track of all the open issues that you definitely still need to do. And it allows you to just create new issues and then check them off whenever they're no longer relevant, etc. And so this basically can start empty. So there's nothing predefined, and whenever you start a release, you start listing whatever needs to be done, and then you start checking them off. But that can then evolve into because every release, although every release is different, there's a lot of repetitiveness as well. So you can start defining some of this logic in a case, predefining, let's say, that some tasks always need to happen. So like, we always need to do an announcement, some additional sanity checks. We need to, once we've done the release, we need to do a handover email to the QE team, etc. So there's lots of things that always need to be done, and your application can easily be extended with additional features by defining them in the case and by taking advantage of all the underlying functionality that the process engine has. So to summarize, what we offer is basically it's not a solution for everyone. So we don't believe that everyone would like to use something like this to kind of quickly build applications as a combination of various UI building blocks. Because if you look at, for example, big customers, like a big banking customer, they would typically have their own complete software cycle to kind of build these applications, and they would basically be using our functionality, but they have their own way of building their UIs. But for small applications, you might just use it for prototyping to quickly show, okay, what's the relevant data? I mean, we're building a case, but we still need to figure out what we want to show to the end user. So you can start doing quick prototypes to kind of see, okay, does this case actually work? Does it provide the value? Can I show it to an end user? Can he see the value that we're trying to do here as well? And so you might have some of these simple applications that you can then, for example, push into the cloud. So, I mean, you've done your application, you've modeled your case, your forms, your rules, etc. You've modeled a custom application, you deploy that into the cloud, and it's going to be an independent, small application which can elastically scale in the cloud, which is executing over there. So that's an easy way to kind of build, prototype, and expose small applications using the full flexibility of what the engine underneath provides. So I guess that's what we were discussing yesterday is like a process engine or BPM in general has a lot of capabilities. When you're building applications, will you build significant applications without taking advantage of that? There's a lot of things to take advantage of. And if you have simple applications and you take advantage of all the underlying support of the process engine, then the application development itself can in some cases be relatively simple as well.